Am I on? I'm on. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Let's get warmed up and start this meeting. So, Stephanie, I'd like to introduce Ms. Stephanie Rossi, the Planning Director for LOCOG, who handles our local LATS committee. So, Stephanie, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Alan's not here, Larry. You are now the co-chair, so get over here. I always need Alan to tell me when I'm going off track, so that's your job today.
He needs another job.
Sorry, Stephanie, please.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm Stephanie Rossi. I'm the Planning Director with Lowcountry Council of Governments. I was asked to come today to talk a little bit about the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization that serves this region. The MPO was established back in about Lisa here, she can probably speak for me, back after the 2010 census and was designated as an urbanized area for the Bluffton-Hilton Head area, and that happens when you trigger a population threshold of 50,000 people. So back in 2013, I believe, it was the official designation, and then actually with the most recent census, our north of the Broad cities, Beaufort and Port Royal, also are now have an urbanized designation. We are still all within one MPO boundary as the Lowcountry Area Transportation Study, and that's the name of our MPO here. The role of the MPO, and I promise not to quote any federal regs or any CFRs, but is to have a continuing where we're constantly updating our transportation planning activities. It's a cooperative process where we're involving stakeholders and intended to be comprehensive. We're not just looking at roads or bikes or any one thing, we're looking at all the comprehensive transportation system. This I put up here just so you do understand that we are funded through transportation legislation at the federal level. The current IIJA will expire in this coming fall, and we are now they're already starting to talk about reauthorization. If you do have anybody's ear at the federal level, Senate or Congress, it's always just a plug to put in that you would like to see more streamlined funding through the MPO process. But that is something that is being worked on as we speak. You can see sometimes there are some lags, so if possible, it could just be that they do a continuing resolution, or we'll actually have a new legislation coming in the fall. So in the state of South Carolina, there's 11 MPOs and 10 COGs. Not all MPOs are housed at a COG. In our region, that is the case. Overall, in the United States, there's about 450 MPOs. And this is the boundary. I have the full 4-county COG boundary up here. With blue is the LATS MPO. So you can see it kind of goes all the way up to 95 in Jasper County, and then Whale Branch, and then outside that is our rural area, and it does not include St. Helena. It does include Ladies Island, but not St. Helena Island. So that designation is important. The COG has rural federal dollars that we can spend and the MPO dollars. The MPO dollars cannot be spent outside that blue line. The rural dollars are a little bit more flexible, but we do try to emphasize that they're spent in the rural area. So the makeup of the MPO is that we have a policy committee that meets every other month, and there's one representative from each of our counties and then the municipalities within that, and then or they can designate that role. So typically it's the mayor or the county chair, unless they've designated it to another council member or member within their agency. The LATS technical committee is made up of staff and meets as needed. And then we have non-voting members from the commissioners and the legislative delegation. So there's 4 responsibilities that the MPO has at an MPO our size. MPOs that are a little larger, about 200,000 and up, they do have one additional requirement that I did not address here since it's not one of our responsibilities at this time. But we are required to have a long-range transportation plan that serves as our sort of like our comprehensive plan, but for transportation, and that serves it must be at least a 20-year horizon. We have a UPWP, it's a Unified Plan Work Program, and that's really not our most exciting document that we produce, but it really is more like my work program. What am I doing to make the MPO function? And then we have a public participation plan that is basically just what it sounds like. Each one of these documents that I'm talking about has a process to go through public participation and identifies what that is. And then the one that has the money attached to it that we all know is the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, and that is a 4-year document with projects that we're going to implement. Okay, so how do these all work together? So we have our long-range plan and our unified work program, each informing each other. And then once we have our long-range plan and our unified work program, those feed into the transportation improvement program where the dollars are actually being spent. So we have to have that long-range transportation plan identify the projects that go into the TIP. The TIP we can't just walk in and put something into the TIP. It has to go through a planning process, which I will go into a little bit. So the long-range transportation plan, as I mentioned, is sort of like that blueprint or long-range vision that we have. It has to be updated every 5 years. Our next one is due in May of 2027, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. It looks at current trends. Based on those current trends, we do future projections, and then that ultimately decides what kind of projects we need to go into that long-range transportation plan. The Unified Work Program, I already addressed this a little bit, but again, it is any federally funded planning activity taking place within the region using federal transportation dollars has to be identified in this program. And then the Public Participation Plan, again, this is for goals that focus on looking at our, it's like hard to see, focus on informing the public, keeping the public informed on our planning process throughout all the planning activities, and then again, the TIP. So this is a 4-year document, or it has to be updated every 4 years. Our next one is due in 2028. The TIP that we have in the state of South Carolina is for 10 years. It does not have to be a 10-year document, but that 4-year is the most key part of it. That's what the federal highways are looking at for the most part, is how are you planning in that first 4-year chunk of your transportation improvement program. It is a set finite amount of money. We are allotted $8.5 million annually to go to program projects into the transportation improvement program. And then those projects must come out of the long-range transportation planning process. So again, I mentioned that the long-range transportation plan is required to be updated every 5 years, and we are just kicking off our update that's going to be due in no later than May of 2027. So we currently have 2 documents. So all those requirements I just went through, we have one for the urban area and then one for the rural area. So we have a rural long-range plan and a urban long-range plan. So we are working on updating both of these documents, and just selected CDM Smith to work on us with this, and we'll be working. We just kicked off internally with them about 2 weeks ago, so this is just starting. So the process is going to look at the data gathering and looking at existing conditions and doing an assessment on that. Part of that is then to next go into the goals and objectives. We'll do a call for projects. Usually that looks at, we contact all of our municipalities and counties and look at their CIPs and see what important needs that they have. Ultimately, it leads to multimodal transportation recommendations. Project prioritization, the project prioritization is required by South Carolina DOT. It's not a federal requirement necessarily, but South Carolina DOT has required this. And then we have to come up with a financially constrained plan and ultimately plan adoption. Part of this we'll look at to kick off, again, all those CIPs, existing plans that are in place. We're not just doing this in a vacuum. We know there's already been a lot of work done in the region, and we want to incorporate that into this process. This is one of those federal things that we have to do. We have all these factors that we have to include. This is, usually these are wrapped into our goal-making process and the objectives at that point. These are several things that each one of those federal legislation or federal acts that I mentioned earlier has made a requirement. I think we originally started out with 5, then the next one we had 7, now we're up to this list here that all of these factors must be included or considered when we're doing our transportation planning. We will also be updating the regional travel demand model. The last time it was updated, we had a base year of 2019. I think a few of you could probably think why that might be a problem. 2019 data compared to what we're seeing now is just nowhere near where we are. So we will be using a base year of 2024. We just don't think 2025 data will be ready in time for us to meet our timeline on this. And our future year, or a forecasted year for this process, will be 2055. The public and stakeholder engagement will be a large part of this. We'll have, within the LATS meeting and presentation, there'll be at least 3 virtual meetings with our consultant team working on this, in addition to any that we have without the consultant team there. The consultant team will also be presenting to the policy committee at least 2 to 3 times throughout the process. And then in terms of public meetings, there'll be 2 public meetings, one usually at the very beginning when we're kicking this off, and then there'll be another one later when we actually have recommendations for them to react to, and we'll be doing an online survey as well. So we'll take all that information, the public feedback, project plans, the data that we've collected, and ultimately come up with these multimodal transportation recommendations that will be funneled into a plan and then prioritize. This is just kind of a schematic looking at what the requirements are. South Carolina DOT does have a prioritization process that we are allowed to tweak it a little bit, and we've been working on that, and we do plan to do that. The way it's written in the directive from DOT might not necessarily fit our area, where they're weighting congestion higher than safety, things like that. These are things that we can take into account and bring in front of the policy committee to make some tweaks as we prioritize those projects. And then lastly, the financial planning. We will take a look at what known revenues we have, and then be able to come up with a cost-feasible planning scenario and what types of projects we can ultimately fund. So what we did last time when we were doing the plan, it was prior to the election and before we knew if a penny tax would pass or not. So we actually had 2 financial plans. We had one without and one with. So we may do something like that this time, depending on the timing and what we'll know coming forward after the next referendum. And this is, if you're more of a visual person, this is what this would look like time-wise. You can see the survey will be launched later this year, more towards the summer, and be available for several months. And then a general timing, we'll probably be kicking off the first meeting with the policy committee, looking like March, April timeframe, and the ultimately adopting in February. We have to have it adopted by May, or we start having federal implications where we could be getting a little bit of trouble from our feds. So we do have a very strict timeline on that. So our goal is to have it adopted in February with a little bit of wiggle room in there in case anything needs to happen or there's any delays along the way. And then now I just want to talk a little bit about the money. So a lot of you've heard about the Transportation Improvement Plan, or the program. I just summarized here some of our projects that we have kind of more near term. We have been primarily funding, although I mentioned, the MPO has been around since 2013, 2015 timeframe. Ultimately, the MPO has been funding the US 17 widening. We only started accumulating dollars back in, I want to say, 2023. And so we have been able to program some projects since then, but if you're wondering why you're not seeing a very big list here, that is US 17 was a very big project for an MPO of our size to take on. We still have the legacy of paying for that phase 2 or the Back River Bridge, and that will be taking up, we've already had an $8 million placeholder in the TIP for the last several years. It will increase to about $9.5 million, and then we're asking LCOG to help pay for the other half of the portion that we will be owing for that project. We have the Triangle project currently in the TIP, not fully funded, of course. This is going to look a little bit different in the next LATS meeting, where we will be probably breaking that Triangle project, and it will no longer be a triangle. It will be the Argent project separate, pulled out as it has full funding, and we will be putting a little bit more transportation funding towards that, and then the Beaufort County portion will be its own project, so that we can keep those moving along without any delays. There are 2 intersection projects north of the Broad. The US 21 SC 128 is already in progress, and DOT's been doing a feasibility study on what improvements to do there. US 21 SC 170 has not, that should be kicking off this year. And then we also have Rebo Road corridor improvements in there, which is in 2028. We have done several plans and studies over the last couple years. 3 of those are now complete. Bluffton Parkway study, SC 315 and SC 46, as well as the Northern Beaufort Transit study. All those have been completed within the last year. Beaufort County is managing 3 of these projects for us. The US 278 corridor study, SC 170 corridor study, and the ITS master plan. And those are moving along. US 278 just had public comment or public meetings over just before the holidays, and SC 170 should be having some public meetings coming up soon. And then we have 3 towards the bottom here that have not kicked off yet and are still in planning stages. The SC 170 multi-use path feasibility study is that looking at the spine that was identified in the Beaufort Connects bike plan. That I'm just waiting for some paperwork back from DOT to move that one along and start advertising for a consultant. And then the last 2 bridge feasibility studies were slated for 2027. Though the TIP is not just our, so those were projects that are funded by our $8.5 million that we're allotted each year. The TIP also includes any federally funded transportation projects. So it also includes transit funding, interstate projects, bridge projects, safety, transportation alternatives. Pavements is in there as kind of more of a lump sum. We don't know, I don't have exact road locations of where each pavement project is, but those are identified as well by county. And then we have the carbon reduction program. Any other federal funds, for example, we were awarded a Protect grant, didn't really fit in any of the other boxes, so it's in this other category as being a new discretionary program. And then a local project of regional significance can also be identified in the TIP as well. Sometimes you want to do that if you're applying for federal discretionary grants, to have a project shown in your TIP already. It kind of it shows that it has regional importance and at the federal level, so that would be something that can be done. So that was all I was going to talk about for the MPO, if there's any questions.
Alice?
Yes. Can you, regional ITS, what does ITS stand for?
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's Intelligent Transportation Systems. So they're doing a study, a master plan for Beaufort and Jasper County that would identify ideal locations for coordinated signal timing, message signs, anything that's kind of more of like a tech version of transportation that would help the traveling public.
Okay, thank you.
And Stephanie, would you also explain, you mentioned the technical committee. Would you explain who's on that and how that interacts with the policy committee?
So the technical committee is made up of subject matter experts or your staff level folks. So that's either your planning staff or your engineering staff if you have that at your agency. And we tend to meet as needed, but what their role is to make recommendations to the policy committee on some of the planning activities that we're doing. So they played a large role in some of our corridor studies as a sounding board, and through the update of the plan, we'll be reaching out to them. Any of you out there, I'll be reaching out to you to collect data and get information about your municipalities and jurisdictions specifically.
So each jurisdiction appoints a member to the policy, to the technical committee. Okay, everybody understands that. All right. First, questions from the board, and I see Mr. Moore, you're on the board. Don't try to hide back there, so you can have a seat up here.
He's trying to hide.
Yeah, I caught sight of you. From the board, any questions?
I have one, and I don't know if this is going to be a good question or not, and it may be hard to answer, so forgive me if that's the case. I'm just curious. So when you're planning these long-range projects, like into 2030 and 2040 beyond, do you, and if so, how do you consider the future of transit and what it may look like and how it may differ from what we see today if some of those transportation projects would be different? Is that even possible?
Changes in transportation technology?
Yeah, so
or?
as mobility and transit options change, cars driving themselves or whatever that is and what it looks like in the future, when you're thinking this far ahead, how does that play into your decision for planning?
Yeah, that is a good question, and it is a little bit difficult to answer. I mean, the plan is updated every 5 years. So ultimately, we say it's going to happen in 2055. It's going to change 5 years from now. Again, we'll keep that rolling, but we'll address some of those issues, but I'm not sure how specific we can get because we don't actually have any of those actively in our area, like driverless cars aren't active in our area currently. So that's something we can write up and consider, but I'm not sure that we'd be able to identify it as a funded project necessarily.
And maybe that is, I guess, the purpose for why it would be updated every 5 years. I was just curious at how you plan for, long-range projects like that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay, Stephanie, I think you have an introduction to make.
I also wanted to introduce Hank Amundsen. He is our new executive director at the Lowcountry Council of Government. He's from Beaufort County. I think all of you know him better than I do.
I didn't give her a bio to read. I'll just keep it short. I've been told from the beginning to keep it short, whether it's at board meetings or presentations. But I've been in the region for about 16 years. I've known a lot of you guys, whether it's working in city government when I was in Colleton County and Walterboro, or county government at Beaufort County. And this is actually my second tour of duty at the Council of Governments. 10 years ago, I worked there for 5 years running their workforce development and aging services departments. And I'm excited to come back. I'd been looking for this job for a long time. I worked for the previous director before Sabrina, was named Chris Bickley, for 2.5 years. I worked for Sabrina for 2.5 years, and I've had a lot of time to learn in between, and I'm excited to work with talented people like Stephanie, or Michelle, or Melina, and especially Letitia Scotland is our aging services director. I have a heart for the human services, which is workforce and aging, and I'm excited to see that they're growing a lot more into the southern part of Beaufort County and out into the rural areas. So we're going to keep focusing on that, but additionally with the technical things, we're going to find more ways to work with municipalities and county governments. You guys will see me at these kind of meetings, and staff, I'll be reaching out just to see how we can work together to make the region better.
Thank you, Hank. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Let you off the hook,
That was
Hank.
easy,
Thank you very much, and good luck. Next, the City of Beaufort has initiated some legislation and So we're going to hear from Ms. Jen Clementoni, the Executive Director of the Carolina Night Birding Center. And she's going to talk about balloon releases and her conversations with Buford.
Good morning, everyone. It's a little cold for all of us this morning. So, my name is Jen Clementoni. I am the Executive Director of the Carolina Night Birding Center. We are a newer 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I just wanted to introduce our organization first briefly. So we will be located at 50 Mud Bar Road, which is in Okatee on Highway 170. It's across the highway from the Port Royal Sound Foundation and Maritime Center. Our project is actually being made possible because of the generosity of some donors who donated that land to us. They are also the same folks that donated the land to the Port Royal Sound Foundation. So we are very, very excited. We will be building an educational campus, but our biggest task is building an intake and triage center for injured birds. Now, I live on Harbor Island, and anybody that's been to Charleston over the past few years, the traffic continues to grow. It takes me 6 hours round trip to drive to Awandale right now, which is the closest rehab center. So we are hoping to bridge that gap, hope save more birds. We'll have an interpretive center, indoor-outdoor classrooms, and we will be having a soft opening in the next month or two. We're just waiting for our mobile office. So we are here to talk about balloons. And we just had an event on Friday evening, and I asked everyone in the audience how many people were local to the Beaufort area. We had 139 people there, and 16 raised their hands and said that they were local. So that just shows that the work that our organization is doing and initiatives like this are so important because many people don't understand our landscape and what it means. So, balloon facts, yes, what goes up must come down. So it might seem like a harmless practice, but what happens is men ending up in our trees, in our marshes. Sea turtles think that these are jellyfish. That is actually their main source of food. And so that becomes a problem. Dolphins, sharks, they are known to kill livestock. They're known to cause power outage. So that is a loss for consumers and for residents as well. Now, being that my son is a City of Beaufort police officer, do I expect him and his colleagues to be chasing people down when a balloon goes astray when you're walking out of Publix? No, I do not. This is about education. And so we worked with the City of Beaufort for them to understand where some of this data came from. I also want to make some points here. What did we see once the City of Beaufort instituted this? Positive. I will take a 90% favorability on online engagement from people any day. As many of you know, you can say that the sky is blue online and people are gonna argue with you right now online. This actually created a ton of favorability for the city because it showed their commitment to the environment. And this was a really simple thing, and here's why. I decided to separate this from the folks that are trying to institute plastic bag or straw bans. Why? Because when you take away an option from a consumer, like a plastic bag or a straw, they get angry. They don't like that. They think that the government is overstepping and overreaching. And while I do believe that those are issues in their own right, this is separate. This is a separate issue. We're not asking you to not buy balloons. We're asking you not to release them into the air and cause litter and destruction. So this is exactly what I wanted to point out. We're not asking for a consumer good to be taken away. And this is so important to our area because, first of all, tourism is a huge driver of the economy in this area. Second, so are our commercial fishermen, our boat tours, our dolphin tours. I just did a reel a few weeks ago highlighting this ban, and we were at Cannon Park, right at the base of the Woods Memorial Bridge, and I texted Josh to tell him there was a balloon right in the marsh behind us. It could not have been more perfect timing, so we put the drone over there to show. So you might not understand that those things are there, but as the tides ebb and flow throughout the day, yes, they are. At my home on Harbor Island, I've had a balloon sitting in my live oak. Now we're going on 6 years. We can't reach it, we can't get to it, it does not break down. And so this is basically the geographic area of the waterways and wetlands of the Carolina Bight. The Carolina Bight is consisted of everything from the St. Helena Sound to the Savannah River in Beaufort and Jasper counties. So just quick, yes, over 100 birds migrated through our area from August through November 15th of this past year. You can actually sit outside on some nights and hear these birds. They all migrate at night for multiple reasons. But again, eliminating another issue for them when it comes to getting tangled, swallowing something is a win-win. And yes, because birds are disappearing at alarming rates. We lose 1 billion birds each year from different causes, whether it be window strikes or from ingesting rodenticides, plastics, things like balloons, etc. I'm just going to skip through this and get to the data. Now, you might ask yourself, well, Jen, why do you only have data from the beaches? Because this data comes from the South Carolina Aquarium, and it comes from people like myself and others, turtle volunteers. We go out every day from May 1st until October 31st every year, and we're the ones that are collecting the trash along our beaches. Can you imagine if we had data from people that were collecting in parks? When they do roadside cleanups, a lot of those people do feed this data back, but you can see here all of the numbers. And in 2024, we had a very large increase. Don't forget, between 20 and 21, 22, we kind of had those COVID years, so a lot of people weren't going out. But the statistics in Beaufort County alone, compared to Charleston and Berkeley counties, were the highest of balloon trash in this area. Clemson knew that they were doing something wrong, and they instituted a ban of releasing 10,000 balloons at every one of their home games, and they have stopped doing that because they know that this is a bad practice. Now, we let Florida beat us. We don't like that, but Governor DeSantis instituted a complete ban on July 1st of 2025 in the state of Florida because, again, he understood and worked with local environmental groups like myself to know that, yes, their sea turtle population, their bird population, their livestock population was going to be affected. And so here are some of the states that have taken action here. Here are some of the cities, and yes, we have the little fireworks sign next to the city of Beaufort. That went into effect this year on January 1st. And this is one of my favorite sayings because this is very true from Theodore Roosevelt is, the wildlife in nature cannot speak for itself, so we must and we will. And who are we protecting? Here's some photos that all of the photos in this presentation, by the way, are things that I've taken myself through our area. And you can see anything from the white pelicans to the osprey when they're grabbing fish, when bringing it back to the nest, dolphins, our wintering tundra swans that come from the Arctic, our brown pelicans. There are only 88 left of this piping plover up here in the breeding population in the Great Lakes, and they winter right here in Beaufort County. Double-crested cormorants, I'm sure a lot of you guys are seeing them right now. Great egrets, kind of the symbol of the Lowcountry. And again, just want to reiterate, this is about livestock, open land, power lines, businesses, tree canopies. We came up with alternatives. A lot of groups will approach you and say, you must do this and you must do that, and they don't come to the table with alternatives. Well, we did, and we're also working with the city on implementing some of this. So blow bubbles instead. I think that's a lot more fun, actually. But plant a tree or a native flower species, create a memory garden, paint rocks. If you're financially capable, donate or create a scholarship in your loved one's honor. Create a memory, have a gathering every year instead of just this one-time cause of sending out balloons. this was just some of the acknowledgements, and I want to thank you all for your time and consideration, and I'm here to take any questions if anyone has.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome. I promised you I'd be quick.
That was quick. And I noticed a lot of cities along the coast in New Jersey.
Yeah. You know, I don't often give props to my former area, but it's one where I will. They have started to take action because they can see what the damage, you know, is done, especially along the coastline. And like I said, because these travel thousands of miles, you know, they can end up inland right here. They don't just stay along the coast.
Okay, I'll open it up for questioning from the board.
I'll just make a comment really quick. One, thank you for your time, Jen, and for being here this morning. This was kind of low-hanging fruit for the city because we had an ordinance in place that restricted balloon release on city-owned property. So just tweaking that a bit and making that across the board in the city was pretty easy. But I did share with you, Mayor, the ordinance that we passed just so that you can have it in case anybody else is interested. So I did email you that this morning.
Yeah, and the reason that this really kind of started to come to a head was I had started getting messages about a mass balloon release that was happening in the city, and there was nothing the city could do about it. And people were really angry, and it has just become, you know, a more of a habit. And now, again, with education, you know, you're going to walk into some of your food stores and they're selling balloons. I'm actually going to be approaching them now, just the ones that are in the city, just to put up, hopefully, some signage, just saying, here's some alternatives, you know, don't just release them. And it really is a good conversation to start having about education overall when it comes to the environment. So thank you so much for your time today.
Well, you kind of answered my question a little bit there in your last couple of minutes. What do you do? What do you suggest? What are we going to do? Ban the sale of balloons? Are we going to
No.
just a public outreach and educate people as to the importance of not releasing them? What's working in other places that you can suggest?
So it definitely is a lot of boots on the ground effort, going to the local schools and to local community groups, a lot of social media, press releases, and then just information. We're working hopefully with the city on potentially installing like a balloon release drop point in one of the parks, just with a little bit of signage so that people understand, let's do this instead. Again, those alternatives that I provided, we're hoping that we can put those in some of the stores and some of the community groups where this is happening. I can tell you that one of the biggest upticks that we see on our turtle patrol is always at graduation season. You know, we get tons of balloons that say, congratulations, graduate. It's like, you know, frustrating, but I just found balloons last week, and Lord knows how, you know, old they are. But really, it's going to be a lot of boots on the ground. This is just a simple thing to say, just like you tell people it's littering to throw a bottle on the ground in a park. This is the same thing, except it's don't release this into the air because it is going to end up coming down. We are not the type of organization that's looking to ban anything. We don't want to take away the option for a consumer good. Balloons are kind of like, you know, something that you grow up with. But understanding that we had positive wins in the form of feedback because you're not taking away an option from someone. It's a simple tool to show your commitment to the environment while you're engaging with the public about the importance of, you know, protecting this environment we love so much.
And what I'll do for the board members, I'll make sure that Kerry, if you and Cindy could get the ordinance out to every jurisdiction. And then one of the purposes, every jurisdiction can look at that ordinance and decide for yourself whether it's applicable, or we can each have the choice of modifying it to our particular circumstance. So we'll make sure we get that out.
Yes, and I'm happy to come present to any of your local municipalities or organizations. Just please reach out to me.
Okay, now we'll open it up to the public. I see former Mayor Salka is here. She probably got Clemson to ban this. Was that you, Lisa?
I didn't hear
I said, the Clemson band was probably.
We stopped our balloon race 20 years ago.
See, I knew it was you who did that.
No, I have nothing on that.
We now have the opportunity for the public to ask any questions of Jen. Hey, Grant, welcome. Could you come forward and speak into the microphone and introduce yourself?
Hey, Jen. This is Grant McClure with the Coastal Conservation League. Just wanted to commend you for your work on getting this ordinance passed in the city of Beaufort, and I'm hopeful that other municipalities will follow suit, and even maybe possibly the counties. And so it's really great work. But I see balloons as one small piece of the puzzle here. There's a lot of other waste that's getting into our marshes, including those plastic bags, styrofoam clamshells, and also straws. And I know you were kind of parsing out the two issues, but I kind of see them as interrelated. And so I'm hopeful that as Beaufort County considers adopting, amending their plastic ordinance to address some of those items, we can have the buy-in from the birding center. And I see these issues as interrelated, and I know you're parsing them out, but personally, I think we need to be doing everything we can to protect our wildlife. And so, again, I think it's a great effort, and I applaud you for it, but I just hope that we're looking at the entire picture here. And so just wanted to say thank you, and we're hopeful that as we move these changes forward in the county, hopefully in the spring, we can have everybody on board, including the municipalities. So thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a stepping stone in the right direction. Honestly, Grant, and we can talk about this later, but based on the feedback I received from our state legislators, that's the reason that I separated that out, so you can read between the lines there. And that's just honest feedback. I'm happy to discuss it with you, but there's lots of problems. Yeah, I mean, anyone that's been to Cypress Wetlands, that is a stormwater management area, and I cringe because yes, I see lots of styrofoam cups and things coming through because it's stormwater management. But this is just, to me, a little bit of a simpler solution because it's not taking away that consumer good option. But we can have a conversation for sure.
Sure, yeah, appreciate it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Anyone else from the public who'd like to ask a question or make a comment for Jen? Jen, thank you very much. And Josh, thank you very much for bringing this issue forward for the board. Okay, next, there's another issue that's come forward, and I'm going to ask Mr. Councilman Dan Wood to come forward and explain that to us.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that before I begin, this is going to be short. It's not scientific. I'm not anti e-bikes or anything like that. That is not the point of this discussion today. It has been brought to our attention. A lot of us on town council in Bluffton, we've seen them all over our community. I believe what happened during the holiday period, there was a proliferation of e-bikes everywhere. I think every kid seemed to get one. And actually, I've seen as many as 20 together at a time, and they're doing the wheelies down the main street and having a good time. But they're kids, and they're not really doing anything wrong. So my goal today is just to mention this, put it on the radar, and we'll see if there is interest in talking about it further. The mayor will ask that question. It's just to keep everybody safe. That's the main point. So anyway, with that, can't see what's on the screen there. Here we go. So this talks about what an e-bike is. I think everybody has seen them by now. There are three classifications, primarily the 1 and the 2. The 3 is the fastest. They do it, the state classifies them essentially as a bicycle. So they have the same rights as a bicycle, which means they can ride them on the roads and places like that where they're allowed. It's measured by the watts or 1 horsepower. And then I wanted to say that, well, I already did say that. They're listed basically at the state law as a bicycle. So let's see the next one. You see here the three different classes, pedal assist. The next one's a throttle assist, and then the class 3 is a pedal assist, but it's the fastest one. You see the speed limits on them. Turns out on the class 3, you can actually modify class 3 if you're smart enough, and you can make it go faster than the 28 miles per hour. Helmets are not required. Age restrictions, no. Some communities may restrict them. One of the things we found when we started digging into this a little bit is this is being addressed across the nation, other states. It's not just being brought up here. No license or registration, and then it tells you where they can ride these items. Do not need a driver's license, no registration, insurance, no statewide helmet mandate, no minimum age. And one thing that I think is important on these bikes is if they're riding them at night, they definitely need a light or reflectors on them. They're supposed to come with it, but you can only imagine a child out there on a bicycle in the evening. Some places allow them on sidewalks and pathways. Some places try to restrict them. Some places actually have speed limits for them and require the helmets, horns, or lights on bikes. Now, I did not know till Heather and I got into this, and Heather put these slides together, and I thank her for that. She took all my notes and made it where everybody can understand it. I did not know that Hilton Head had dealt with this and addressed this. I don't see them here today, but if you want more information, you can look at it. And this PowerPoint will be out there for people that are interested in it. It's available, and you can just pull it back up and get it. But this talks about what Hilton Head has allowed and not allowed. And, you know, they have a very unique, they're a bicycle city. They've got lots of pathways everywhere. So, I tip my hat to Hilton Head going back years ago for putting those paths out there for the public. So they're not a moped. It says if an e-bike exceeds 20 miles per hour, 750 watts, it is considered a moped, requiring a registration and a valid driver's license, but they are not in a moped classification. So one of the things I wanted to mention also is the Spanish Moss Trail has restricted to a Class 1 e-bike. You can't have a Class 2 or Class 3 on it. And another thing that's important for us to realize is we are in a very urban environment. So any child that's trying to ride a bicycle in an urban environment is not the most safe thing for anybody. It's hazardous, and I don't know how we're going to deal with that. One of the things I pulled up in advance was, Beaufort County just finished the parkway studies for Bluffton, only Bluffton. And the DOT identified in a 7-year period, there were 26 pedestrian bicycle accidents just on the parkway. So that made me want to start thinking about the fact, I wonder if we looked across the entire Beaufort County spectrum and looked at all of the jurisdictions, I wonder how many other accidents we've had. December of last year, we had, I think it says 25, but anyway, we had a 12-year-old that was trying to cross near Hampton Hall over the parkway on an e-bike with no helmet, and he was struck by an automobile. And Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was airlifted, do you know, to Savannah? I think he was airlifted to Savannah. And I just spoke with the chief just the other day about this, and he just finally made it back to school. Now, I don't single him out because he was on an e-bike, because he could have been on a regular bike. It's the issue we're dealing with in the urban environment. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these questions up here, but the question I lay on the table, and I've talked with the county, Tab and I were talking about it, and I know the county was looking at some of this also. but is this an issue that SoLoco wants to bring up and discuss, or is it that each individual jurisdiction should address it?
Thank you, Dan. This was meant, and since Dan brought it to my attention, this was meant to just give you all an idea that there's an issue out there. One of the things that SoLoco has done successfully over the 8 years of our existence is when we identified a problem, like housing, we formed a subcommittee. That committee came back with data and recommendations for us to consider. And the Housing Trust came from a presentation and then a subcommittee, and then it became a reality. So my question to the board is this. Do we want to add this to an agenda in the near future? Do we want to form a subcommittee like we've done in the past to come back and when they're ready to be put on an agenda, given specific data? Dan talked about a couple of incidents, but I'm sure there's other data. And there are, like Hilton Head, and I think you had Mount Pleasant up there, there are other jurisdictions that already have something in place. So let's, I'd like to open it up. Any thoughts from the board on how we should proceed, or if we should proceed as a SoLoco agenda item?
Yeah.
Yes.
So my first question, and Dan and I kind of sent back and forth, I'd be interested in Hilton Head, do they enforce their policy? Because I'm going to say, it's my favorite thing to say, I believe in law and order, but if you put a rule in effect, you put a policy in effect, you enforce it or take it away. Because what happens is, if you limit e-bikes, I don't care how you do it, put a rule in, your people who don't like e-bikes or don't like kids under their feet are gonna be calling the law enforcement all the time, hey, they're riding 20 abreast on Bluffton Parkway, hey, they're not following the lights. So I think it's a very difficult issue to touch, because this is really parental responsibility too. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at it, but carefully, because law enforcement, I already talked to our sheriff, this is like another thing that they're probably not, I mean, I've seen Bluffton police blow past 20 kids riding e-bike. They're not gonna stop and do something. Okay, so the question is, what do we put in? How will we enforce it? Or are we gonna do like the birding, making an education campaign? Maybe that's where we go at first. You know, why is it an issue? Make it a campaign for education for people.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to make, I understand Tab's comments, we've talked about it a lot, and with Dan too. But in my neck of the woods, the electric scooters are an issue too with kids, and no helmets. So, and they get on the Spanish Moss Trail, and I know they're going faster. Anybody that walks on the Spanish Moss Trail has been almost run over by e-bikes sometimes. So, and it is a rule on it, but like you said, who's going to enforce it?
So.
Yeah.
You know, if I were a child, which sometimes I act like one, I'm sure, but if I were a child and the rule's not enforced, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm driving right past that sheriff, I'm driving right past that officer, they're not gonna stop me. I have children coming into Sun City daily on e-bikes, literally terrorizing some little old ladies walking around Lake Somerset. Nothing we can do about it. Securitas is not gonna grab them, they're not gonna chase them. I think we need to go for education first and talk about why it's not safe for some children. I don't think the state's gonna regulate it, I would just guess.
Well, I think these are all issues that we need some report that comes back in depth, and so then we can have an in-depth conversation. So the question before the board, do we want to add this to a future agenda item? And then I'll I'll rope somebody into leading that presentation, because it's just 5 minutes. You know, do we want to look at this further for potential future debate and possible action?
I would suggest that we do that. Talk about educating the people, the parents, the kids, and all that, and we need to be educating ourselves. And look at some data, see how many serious accidents there are, you know, and what's happening in other places. Because, like Dan said, this is a regional, the whole country, and even internationally. This is something somewhat new, even though they've been out for 10 or 15 years or so now. We're hearing more complaints from people on the sidewalks scared of getting hurt than we are reports of actually kids getting hurt with their actions. So I would be in favor of looking into it, trying to get a direction of where we are and where we need to go, or if we need to.
And I would also agree with that. I think it's important that we're educated on it so that we can, if that's an education campaign that goes out, but I also would say that it's important that we do that as a body, because we do have so much overlap. And so I think we would benefit from that continuity, learning together and then figuring out how do we address this as a region. So I would support.
I think we need to go into it in more depth. We're not here to make a decision today or even a debate today. What we're here is, we need, if we're going to do anything as a region, I think we need to have someone give us a more in-depth presentation. So unless I hear differently, I'll arrange for this to go on to a future agenda, and I'm sure I can find someone who will volunteer to take the lead of that subcommittee. Oh, you know, I wasn't going to put him in the spot, but you can. So, yeah, I think that would be a logical candidate, and I'll work with Mr. Wood after the meeting. Thank you very much, Dan, for bringing that to our attention.
Good job,
For the February agenda, there's a couple of items that we might want to consider. First of all, our council, led by our new Mayor Pro Tem, which is Steve Mearsman. Steve, would you please identify yourself? And Ms. Valerie Guzman have both agreed that we need some further clarifications on things like Senator Davis' concurrency legislation. And I'm sure there's a number of other things that our delegation is working on that's a priority for each of them. So my question to the board is, we will take the initiative, and I've already talked to Senator Davis, if we want to set up a meeting and invite each member of the delegation to give us a little bit more in depth on a couple of key legislative items that we might want to advocate or even just learn more about. I will certainly, we're going to do it in Hardeeville individually, but if the board wants us to set up a meeting, it would be a Monday or a Friday because they're in session. Invite everyone, all the elected officials of the region and all the delegations to come together. We would work on, there's a pretty big capacity at Margaritaville, and Mr. Mearsman offered to arrange that. So if there's an interest, it would not be a Soloco meeting. It would be a separate meeting on a Monday or Friday when the delegation members are potentially available. Are you interested in that? Okay. So we'll arrange that with the delegation. Yes.
Would that replace our February meeting, or would you like to look for a topic for our regular February meeting as well?
Let's look for a topic for February, and then let me work on the separate meeting for the delegation, okay? If it turns out to be it's close, we can always do it in lieu of February's Soloco, or let's see what we can arrange first.
Because,
Okay?
I was gonna say, if you were not gonna have the legislative delegation at our regular meeting, you could always see if the municipal association, whether it's the field service or one of them, wanna come and give an update on what they're seeing at the state, legislative, and kind of have the two meetings, one with the delegation and one from the municipal association in here, but that's just a suggestion.
That's a suggestion. I think if we get the delegates right here, and they each tell us, okay, this is my key point, that will help us as a region, I think that might be more effective than getting it from the municipal association. But it's a good option, Steve. So February, and one of the I want to turn it over briefly to Ms. Howard to talk about their transportation sales tax initiative.
Last night, we passed the resolution unanimously to form the Transportation Advisory Committee, and there will be a press release going out today, I'm sure, about it. But I'd like to read the names of the people appointed to it by district, and then City of Beaufort, Town of Port Royal, Town of Bluffton, and Town of Hilton Head. I'll start with them first, and then we'll go through the districts. City of Beaufort appointed Grady Woods. Town of Port Royal appointed Gary Freeman. Town of Bluffton appointed former Mayor Lisa Sulka. Town of Hilton Head appointed Glenn Stanford. District 1 is Joseph Klein. District 2 is Paul Trask. District 3 of the county is Anthony Jones. District 4 is Elizabeth Sanders. District 5 is Jerry Reeves. District 6 is Craig Forrest. District 7 is Bill Rickett. District 8 is Joy Coe. District 9 is Matt Harden. District 10 is Charles Perry. And District 11 is Jennifer Erickson. And this group will meet starting February 4th at 5:30 in the executive conference room at the county 100 Reebok Road. So we're looking forward to that getting started. They're on a very tight schedule, and hopefully we'll get all the recommendations back soon, and then we'll start doing meetings with the public too. Do you have anything else to add, Mike?
I think you hit it all. We're looking forward to it, and Jared's in the back there, so our team will be there to work with the committee to present the projects, prioritize, and move forward to county council with the question for a referendum in November.
And they'll be meeting with the local other governments too, as they go through the process. Do you want to add anything, Tab?
The only thing I would stress is everyone on this committee is a citizen, not that we're all not, but there are no elected officials sitting on this committee. So we're trusting, eyes of other people to look at these projects and support where we're going to go. So they're all citizens recommended by either their council person or the municipality. We hope that it'll be great. I'm very hopeful for it.
Michael or Alice, could you send to the entire board the exact time, date, so we all have that, can put it on our calendar?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry to butt in on you.
Can I ask one question just for clarification, because it was something I was a little unclear on? So this board will meet, they'll determine priorities, advise to council. What would be, or has there been conversation on the responsibility for this board should the referendum pass? Or would that be a discussion that would take place after we see if the referendum passes or not?
I think that would be a discussion that we could have after it passes, but I do think we've discussed with the school board, Beaufort County School Board, they've had a citizen oversight committee for their projects, so that would be something. we would consider. I think that would be a different group potentially than this group. This group, I think, is going to work through the process to deliver the information to form the ballot question. And then should it pass, then I think there should be another oversight committee, but that's obviously up to council, and we'd have that discussion. But that would be my recommendation.
I would agree with that. And anyone that's watched any of the school board meetings, Beaufort County School Board, you see the Citizens Oversight Committee reports out quarterly. They are actually boots on the ground. So they go to Hilton Head High School to see how the building's going. They report on projects specific with actual eyes on. So they're not a 30,000-mile view, they're right on the ground. That's what we might foresee happening after, when the referendum passes. But it would be a citizens group to actually look at that, to watch the project.
Because I think when we were attempting to get folks on the committee, we only asked them for a few months. So this would be a more enduring commitment to oversee the projects. But so I think it'd be a different committee.
And it's been very successful with the school district, and so, why not copy somebody else's good ideas, right? So.
Yeah, and I just bring it up because I think that, just my opinion, but I feel like it would be helpful in getting this passed, and I think that it's very important that it does pass, if there was confidence in that oversight committee and not a question on whether or not it will be stood up should it pass.
Right, and I think that's something that could be added as part of the ballot question, and that could be specified in the ordinance that county council passes. So I think that's a good suggestion.
And actually, when we talked about this, I don't know, December, November, we talked about having a citizens oversight committee similar to the school district so that people would have confidence in that lives in the county and is overseeing these projects. So we think that would be a valuable thing to have.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off because there's what I'll try to do is I'll try to get this delegation meeting for Monday the 23rd to replace the Soloco meeting on the 24th. I'll keep you all informed. If that's okay, unless somebody objects, let me know. And then if we do need a separate February agenda because they can't make it or whatever, the next presentations that were on our list, we've heard from the municipalities. We still need to hear from Jasper and Beaufort. Beaufort, you could make this referendum part your presentation. Jasper, we have our new assistant administrator, Eric Larson, for Jasper County. Eric, if you could prepare your presentation, and that may also be an update on what Jasper's doing with their transportation referendum. And then I'll work on also arranging the bike agenda as we go along. If that's okay with the board. We can then go to adjournment. We're just almost on time, close. All right, well, thank you everybody for attending, and we'll see you next month.